Today, we will talk about the murder of a 12-year-old boy, Gabriel Kuhn, in Brazil. Gabriel Kuhn was born in Brazil in 1994. He was an energetic and full of life, loved, respected, and raised well by his family. Gabriel loved to play video games, never knowing that one day these video games would be his undoing. One day, Gabriel was playing with a friend he had met in the online game Tibia and often met in the game. They lived in the same neighborhood in the city of Santa Caterina, with Daniel Felipe Pedro, born in 1991, who lived in the same neighborhood in the city of Santa Caterina. Gabriel didn't have enough game currency to buy various items from the in-game online store, so he asked his friend Daniel to lend him 20,000 ball coins, equivalent to about $2. At the time, Daniel was fine with it and gave him the play money. Their friendship resumed. Later, however, Gabriel's failure to repay the money was a great disappointment. It was even the last straw for Gabriel to leave the online server they were communicating on in time to pay the debt. The consequences of his anger were staggering. It was July 23, 2007. Daniel Petrie started his day around 9:30 when Gabriel, his mother Novo, Tren had started the day with a phone call to find out when he was coming home, so he knew how much time he had for the confrontation he had planned. Then, on the grounds of putting things right, Gabriel prepared to go home to meet Kuhn face to face. Gabriel was surprised when Daniel arrived home. At first, he was unsure whether or not to let his virtual friend into his home, but it didn't take long for Daniel to convince him that his friend Daniel, with whom he had been playing all this time, had come because he wanted to resolve their dispute. Daniel Petrie entered the house and then Gabriel's room. Unnoticed, he had already locked the outer door. Shocked by the first slap, Gabriel couldn't comprehend the events, but he realized that letting the virtual playmate he thought he knew so well into the house had been the wrong decision of his life. The rabid Daniel did not stop. He showed no mercy. He kept attacking. He was so overcome with rage that his actions were not enough. He ignored Gabriel's promises that he would tell his mother what he had done, because Daniel knew that Gabriel's mother would not be coming home for a long time. The sheets in the room were already the color of 13-year-old Gabriel's blood, but Daniel Perry had no reason to stop. Gabriel had sexually assaulted him, but he also felt he had to silence him. He ripped out the electrical wires and wrapped them around the frog's neck. He strangled him until he was immobilized. He had to get rid of the body of the friend he thought he had killed. He went around the house. He decided the most logical place to do this was in the attic. He tried to drag Gabriel's body up to the attic, but it was too heavy for Daniel. He began to look for an alternative way to carry the body. The saw he found in the kitchen was Daniel's alternative and cruel way. He took the saw, returned to Gabriel, whom he thought was dead, and began to cut off his legs to separate them from his upper body. He had almost finished cutting off one leg when Gabriel, who had fainted from lack of air, woke up in pain and started screaming. Daniel was surprised to see that Gabriel was not dead, but instead of stopping him, the screams spurred him on. Harder and faster, he moved the saw back and forth, and Gabriel passed out again, this time from pain and blood loss. By the time his body was completely cut in two, 13-year-old Gabriel was already dead. After Daniel broke the symbols of the repentance game on Gabriel's chest, he tried to squeeze his lifeless body into the attic. The upper part of Gabriel's body was in the tiny attic, while his legs were in the middle of the corridor. Right next to it was the tool of the crime, a hacksaw. Like a scene from a horror movie, the crime scene was soaked in blood. This despite all the crimes he had committed and the fact that he showed no signs of remorse. This has had a huge impact on the Brazilian public. People were no longer only stunned by the horrible crime, but also by the outcome of the trial. The public and his family believed that justice would be served and that Perry would be sentenced to life in prison. But the outcome was not what they expected. The verdict was as much talked about as the murder itself. Medical players were not silent either. Players all over the world began to protest. Many of them stopped playing the game after this horrific event. players sent messages of condolences to the family and were frank in their condemnation of Perry's sentence as inadequate. They condemned the outcome, but there was no change in the sentence. Daniel Peter was released from prison in 2010, exactly 3 years after the murder. But after his release, no one heard from him again. His social media accounts were searched, but no online results were found. Various theories have been put forward over this uncertainty. One of the most popular theories was that Peter might have killed himself out of guilt. However, it doesn't make sense that someone who showed no signs of remorse, both during the murder and during the trial, could have ended his own life out of guilt. In addition, one of the most debated theories is that Perry changed his name and still lives in public or fled the country. It was later proven that the young man named Sao Paulo Marcos Daniel, who faced public outcry over the name's similarity, was not the Daniel Petri named in this case. Nevertheless, years later, neither one of these theories can be proven, nor has the uncertainty about the real Daniel Petri been resolved. What remained was the pain of the Gabriel family and their loved ones. The scars left on society by this brutal murder would last for years. The tragic case we talk about in this video has left us with unimaginable pain, even as we investigate it. It's hard to imagine the pain of the people who have to deal with such an event one-on-one. That's the end of this video. See you in the next one. Take care of yourselves very well.